Welcome to the Global Journalism Seminars. This is The Briefing. On December 10th last year, Argentina inaugurated Javier Milei as president. The far-right, ultra-liberal economist had promised sweeping changes, including the privatization of state-owned media outlets like Televisión Pública, Radio Nacional, and Telam, the national news agency. On March 4th, Milei made good on his promise, and 700 workers at the agency arrived to find the office doors barred. According to our Digital News Report 2023, up to 16% of Argentinians use Televisión Pública for news offline and 10% for online news. These figures put the public broadcaster far behind private competitors such as TN and Telefe. Our guest today is Hugo Alconada Mon, multi-award-winning investigations unit editor with over 20 years at Argentina's leading conservative daily, La Nación. Hugo has covered politics and corruption for decades, has a master's in political communication, and is a member of the ICIJ. We'll ask Hugo about the current state of journalism there and how journalists are organizing to overcome these threats. That's The Briefing. Let's begin. Hello and welcome back to the Reuters Institute's Global Journalism Seminars. We're back after spring break and so pleased to have 4 new journalist fellows with us, as well as Hugo Alconada Mon from Argentina to kick off our ongoing global conversation. Hugo leads the investigations unit at La Nación newspaper and has had work published up and down the length of North and South America. So thank you so much for making time to speak with us today, and welcome, Hugo.
It's a pleasure for me. Thank you very much, Caitlin, for having me. It's really a privilege. Let's do it.
Let's do it. Let's set the scene for those who might be less familiar with the Argentine landscape, and given President Milei's apparent hostility towards the press, can you describe how day-to-day operations for journalists in Argentina have changed since he took office?
Well, what I could say is that it has not only changed, but also exacerbated some tendencies that were there. We could say that, for instance, public officers are avoiding journalists to spread the news. They are intensively using social media to spread propaganda, just to avoid the analysis and the checks done by journalists. And I would say that also it has increased and exacerbated some tendencies in the social media, bots, trolls attacking journalists and media outlets with half truths or complete lies. In the case of President Milei, he's going much farther than his predecessors when it comes to virtually harass journalists. Also, he's celebrating attacks done by trolls in social media, liking or retweeting their attacks. And also he's of course avoiding journalists and blocking journalists on his own Twitter. Let me give you a personal example. In my case, I've been investigating political campaigns and presidential campaigns for the last, I think, 15 years. Mainly focus on financial campaigns, how they get money to run their campaigns. And I've been asking for a meeting with President Milei, then candidate Milei, or his inner circle since February of last year.
Wow.
And I was never able to sit down with then candidate Milei or his sister or their main aides And I found out recently that Javier Milei blocked me in Twitter. And when I started checking backwards when happened, it was around July of last year. Of course, I was able to circumvent that, but again, it was just like saying, I don't want to hear about you, I don't want to know about you, and I don't want you to get my information or propaganda. And finally, what I would say is that it didn't complicate my daily routines, but it's uncomfortable to see how a president reacts to coverage, and it also sets a message and an example for another politicians of how to behave in front of journalists, and that is a wrong message to give.
I'm left wondering, what are the difficult questions that he thinks you're going to ask that he's trying to avoid?
Well, what happened is that I usually, or let me rephrase my comment. I always call before publication. So if you want, every week he could be knowing what I was looking to ask him the previous week, because I've been publishing investigations about his donors and about his behaviors, even about how he deals with the pressure. I'm not meddling on his private stories, but the odd thing is that President Milei told a lot about that, about how he did not interact with his parents for a decade, how his dad physically and psychologically exert violence against him, and how he bullied him. So I was trying to reconstruct those chapters of his life. Actually, I also found out afterwards that he accused me of trying to get some nasty things about his own story that he was actually unraveling. And he even accused me of getting, dirty money from his rivals on the presidential campaign and so on. But okay. Yeah,
it's a lot. Let's take a little bit of a more practical line of questioning. With Milei's plans to privatize public media and end state advertising, what would be the long-term effects on journalistic independence and for financial sustainability in Argentina if he was successful?
Well, let me say first that if he's able to shut the public media down, there will be millions of Argentines without any kind of access to information. And I know that it seems strange to say that, given that Argentina is part of the G20 and has a strong media landscape. But at the same time, we have an expression here in Argentina, I don't know if it's used also internationally, it's media deserts. That is to say that there are areas in which there are no, media outlets. I mean, entire regions, provinces. Yeah, you have media outlets linked to the local government. It will be or the city government or the state government, but it's linked to that. And there are no private media outlets. and it's very difficult to be a journalist on those regions. And in some way, the national public radio or the national public television was able to give an extra, voice on those areas. And if you close those public media outlets, it will be a major problem on those regions. That's one way of seeing it. The other thing that I would say, Kathleen, is that Argentina is under a very long recession that has been here for the last decade, at least. And it's been a period in which the private advertisers are decreasing. The media subscribers are not increasing as much as would be needed. And in that situation, if Milei is also, cutting the public advertising in private media outlets down, there are many, newspapers, radios, TV broadcasts that are, facing problems, are, starting to be weak and starting to cut some, places down, and it's a real problem.
But is it feasible privatization if it were not a shutdown but a move to private ownership? Would they survive?
That's an open question. These days, actually yesterday night, the Argentine Congress, the Argentine Chamber of Deputies, it will be like the equivalent of the US House of Representatives in Argentina, approve a bill proposed by Milei's government, and now has to be also approved by the Argentine Senate. If approved, that bill would give President Milei the faculties that will allow him to go forward with the privatization or closing those public media outlets. By now, it's an open question. Yeah, it's okay how the video opening our conversation express it, because Telam or Televisión Pública has closed down publicly, but they are still there. Journalists has been sent home, but not being fired. But they are waiting. Actually, I have plenty of friends that are, saying, "What is going on? I want to get back." And actually, there are some photographers that are saying, "My cameras are in there. Let me at least get my cameras back." They are waiting, and we are all waiting. Milei has expressed strong views against the public media, and he's of course based on what we dealt with during the last, I would say, 30 years, in which every government used the public media for their own benefit. And let me give you a way of seeing it for people outside of Argentina. The Argentine public media is not like the BBC. It's more close to the Russia Today sort of public media. And so the good way of dealing with this, it'd be great if we would propose something similar to, let's say, to replicate the BBC, not to close down everything. But again, it's still an open question. President Milei has promised during his presidential campaign to use, how you say, the tool to cut trees down, motosierra, how you say it?
Chainsaw.
So he's not talking about being like a surgeon, you know, cutting patients with extreme care, and you know, being sensitive of every kind of, you know, lymphatic system and every. No, he's saying, this is gonna be like me on the woods. Prepare yourself.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
We'll see if he can do it.
Consequences be damned. It sounds like you're saying that a more reasonable answer would be to do the work to secure the independence of the public media, to secure protections for the independence of the public media, and then let them do the job of informing the public and holding to account.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yes. As you know, I was the White House correspondent for La Nación for almost 5 years. And I love to hear the NPR shows on radio. And that would be a superb example to replicate in Argentina.
Yeah.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I also know and I have heard and benefited from hearing and viewing the BBC. Again, it's an open question if we can replicate that in Argentina without, you know, political salt and pepper, you know. But I think it's the road that we should be aiming to.
Yeah.
Instead of closing everything down.
Yeah.
And again, there are great journalists, reporters working in public media all over the country. And instead of focusing on how the public media was used for political propaganda, let's do it the right way now.
Yeah. Hernan Lombardi suggested a cooperative for public media. Is that something that could work? Is that something that Milei might be open to?
Milei is all for closing it down. I heard Lombardi's position. It's a well-intentioned idea, but again, we are talking about a country dealing with a very deep recession, with, you know, a recession that is compared to last year. In some moments and in some areas, it's 5 to 10% decreasement. And with, you know, private advertisers retiring. So I'm not sure if that model is feasible in Argentina. And that's why I'm talking about, or, you know, highlighting the BBC model. You know, is, can we do it with some sort of public support? Some sort. Of course, we could also try to do it as the National Public Radio does in the US, just to give a headset to people outside from the US. Yeah. National Public Radio, let's say that once every month, sets 1 or 2 days in which they call for the public support and public donors, and hey, do you like what we do? Do you like what we are producing? Do you like what you are hearing? Help us to do it.
And we'll give you a tote bag.
Yeah, we don't care if you can donate $1 or $15.
Yeah.
Do it.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's feasible in Argentina.
Okay, let's move away from the media systems and back to the journalists themselves. Reporters Without Borders has expressed serious concern about the safety and freedom of journalists under Milei's administration. And it's not just Milei's administration, it's consequences of spiraling violence in places as well. What measures do you think need to be implemented to protect journalists from threats and aggression as they go about their work?
many.
Mm.
And I think there are some measures that must be done by journalists themselves, some others by media outlets, some others by media associations locally in Argentina, and some others internationally. Of course, I'm not sure if many of those attempts work, for instance, in the US during Trump's administration. Not even if it worked in Brazil with Bolsonaro, or if it's working now in Salvador with Bukele. I have plenty of friends there in El Salvador, in El Faro, for instance. They are great journalists, and they are dealing with really hard times. But I started saying, we should reading again this book, All the President's Men.
Yeah.
But because it shows us, how to deal with a president that is all against the media. And also, I would say, more recently, we should also read this one.
Ah, that's interesting. Marty Baron.
Yeah.
I haven't read that.
Collision of Power.
I love a seminar with book recommendations. It's book club for journalists.
Marty Baron was the editor of the Washington Post during Trump's administration. Let me sum up the entire book in a tweet. He says over and over again, I think, we are at work, not at war.
Nice.
What we must do is work. Let's do journalism.
Nice.
Yeah, and they are gonna insult us. Yeah, they're gonna threaten us. Yeah, they're gonna maybe try to get us into court. Let's do our job. It's not easy. It's sometimes not nice. Sometimes your families suffer, and you keep going. But you have to do it in a smart way.
Brilliant.
So in that regard, I would say that we have plenty of tricks and techniques that we can use.
What are they? What are they? Spill the beans.
Yeah. Actually, in our case in Argentina, for instance, in my case, I've been threatened by the last governments, and actually, even the presidents, trash me down in TV. One of those governments almost accused me of treason. Another government tried to wiretap my telephones, and I legally followed my kids, wife, and parents. There were plenty of problems during the last 15 years for me, my family, and some colleagues. But we worked anyway. And what we did is, for instance, every time we were about to publish a sensitive investigation, I would call some colleagues to anticipate what we were doing, giving them like it would be the preview with the particular topics on revelations and of our investigation, offering them to appear on their TV or radio shows, asking them to call me if someone tried to deny everything or say it was a lie or accuse me of whatever. Is you have my phone, call me, and I would we'd be willing to express our views, explain our investigation. And we also try to create a a national alliance of investigative journalists in Argentina, Red Federal de Periodistas de Investigación, that is led by a wonderful Argentine journalist from Tucumán, the province of Tucumán, Irene Benito, and we met last year. And the idea is also, it's to help each other. Yeah, we are competing against, one against the other, but we are also trying to be not alone in our roads, not to be like, lone wolves, but to say, hey, if you are facing a problem, call us back. You are dealing with some issues, call us. If you have something that you cannot, complete by your own, call us. If you are being threatened, call us. We are also, in our case, in my case, I also try to, get a real access to associations like FOPEA, is the Argentine Forum for Journalists, and ADEPA, that is the Association of Media Outlets in Argentina. And I also try to do that in the international arena. So I start calling, Fundación Gabo in Colombia, and I talk with the Center to Protect Journalists, ZPJ, and I'm member of the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists. So what I'm trying to say is I try to build my own safety nets and a sense of community. So was that when a storm hit, I would have plenty of telephones to call to ask for help. And when a storm hit, I would be able to try to deal with that storm, via some colleagues, or in TV, or in radio, or on the internet, so as to avoid the efforts to censor my stories, or trashing me down. So I would also invite colleagues that are now viewing us, watching us, to try to do the same. Yeah, they could say, you, Alconada, but maybe you are lucky, or maybe you have access to people that I can't. Because maybe I'm in a small, town in the middle of nowhere, and I cannot call Fundación Gabo, and in Colombia are telling me, we are willing to help you. But at least try to do the same locally. Try to do it with colleagues from your own town or your own city. I'm doing it. And it's an effort. And just to close this comment, Caitlin, if I'm, for instance, preparing and investigating a topic for a month or 6 months, or in my case, 4 years, I have to spend a day calling journalists on the radios or in the TV, saying, tomorrow we are going to publish a story, a sensitive story, with some particular revelations and some topics that were never able to be on the public arena. And if you need something, call me. And if you want like a preview, I can send you an email and I can explain it to you, so as even to baby feed colleagues, so as to prepare them, because it's on my own benefit to benefit them.
Pre-gaming your stories.
Absolutely.
Hugo, I want to go to audience questions because there are a lot coming in, and I'm sure we will have some there soon. But before we do, you've spoken a lot about associations and the community safety net, a sort of alliance of truth seekers. But from what I've heard, unfortunately, this administration has coincided with a very difficult time for the journalists union in Argentina. And do you think it's equipped to facilitate a coordinated response to these threats?
No, and that's an issue in Argentina. We call it La Grieta. It's been in Argentina for the last, I would say, 15 to 20 years, in which media outlets and journalists have been, setting them apart, and with maybe two areas and with distrust to each other. So there were media outlets and journalists in favor or more closer to the Kirchneristas, and some other media outlets and some journalists against the Kirchneristas. And that said, like to be a distrust among each other, and you say, I don't really trust you, Caitlin. I'm not sure if I can talk with you, even to talk with you. So now that we are facing a major challenge, that distrust from the last 15 years is there. And it's going to be a challenge for us. Having said that, the Argentine journalists showed us a way of dealing with that in the past. It happened in the 1990s when a photographer was killed in Argentina, José Luis Cabezas, and the Argentine journalists from all kind of media outlets joined forces to investigate together that crime.
That's what you want to see in a crisis, right? That it brings down those walls, not exacerbates them.
And luckily, we will be able to do something similar to that without needing a major crime or disaster to happen in Argentina.
Yeah.
You see.
Yeah. I want to go downstairs to Osama. And Osama is from Iraq and has a question that makes a lot of sense. Go for it, Osama.
Thank you so much, and thank you for your insights about the situation over there. You mentioned that public officials now are avoiding the journalists. So what is it that you're doing to deal with this situation? Of course, you need to talk to them, and sometimes do verifications, to get their comments, like, to have some sense of like what is going on from this side. So what is it that journalists are doing? Like, are there any particular ways they use to deal with this situation? And perhaps just a short second question is, now that they're avoiding the journalists, is it the same for foreign media? Because in some places, based on our experiences, like, they are more than happy to talk to the international media, kind of gives them the exposure. Is it the same in your experience? Thank you.
Well, of course, it's different for a journalist working on a print media than journalists working maybe on a TV station, of course. What we are doing is we continue to investigate. And let's say that we are publishing this coming Sunday story. What we are doing is calling on Thursday to give them, more than 72 hours to express their views, to comment our story, to give us their feedback, to answer our questions. And actually, if they don't answer, what we do is to write a paragraph in our story, say, La Nación, try to contact the public officer and try to ask him about these questions, and he refused to answer. And on let's say that we publish on Sunday, And then on Monday, we will call him again. And if there is a press conference from the government, we will go to that press conference and we will raise our hand to try to get a question asked regarding that investigation. And if they refuse to answer, we will say that they refuse to answer. Of course, it's this service to our readers not being able to get their answers, because it would be much better for our readers to read what we investigated and what we uncovered and what they have to say to that investigation. But if they don't answer our questions, we will go forward anyway. Of course, it's uncomfortable for everyone. And let me be clear, we really try to ask them. And it's not that we ask them, is just to say that, yeah, we try to reach them, but we are, better without their answers. No, we really want to know. Because we cannot disregard the possibility of being wrong. And maybe they have a real factual explanation to what we found. So it would be much better if they would answer us. But anyway, and regarding the international media opportunities that the Argentine government, and not only the Argentine government, are using, yeah, that happens a lot. And of course, they are, choosing which international media outlets to accept. In the case of Argentina's President Milei, he talked with I don't remember his full name, Tucker Carlson.
Yeah,
Carlson, for instance, and he accepted an interview with the Financial Times, thinking that the Financial Times would be closer to his political and economical views. President Milei found out that the Financial Times were journalists doing their job. So what happened was that President Milei had to answer some uncomfortable questions that he refused to answer in Argentina. And let me be clear about that. And that's part of our efforts too as journalists. If you know that you cannot get access to a public officer, but you know that that public officer will be willing to answer questions from a colleague from abroad, maybe you should be trying to contact that colleague to pass them your questions for them to ask those questions. And actually, I do that a lot. I usually ask colleagues locally and abroad to ask the questions that I know that I cannot ask because they are not willing to open the door to me. You have to be, willing to deal with the challenges, and sometimes it's a benefit waiting for you over there.
that's such a good answer. Before I come to you, Samuel Thomas, there are some very interesting questions online. I'm going to start with Nico Rousseau, who asks about Milei's decision to withhold state-funded advertising campaigns, who are accustomed to receiving them. Could it lead to a more impartial industry, a more business-oriented environment?
I'm not that sure. Because of the media landscape in Argentina, the characteristics of the media in Argentina, the situation in different regions, forget about the USA as a point of comparison. Again, because Argentina is facing a recession that has lasted for a decade. And so, and you cannot also keep in mind also that in the case of Argentina, there are some governors willing to publicly advertise some media outlets. So in the end, you could be facing the possibility of some independent, really independent media closing their doors down, and some politically driven media outlets flourishing because they get money from a particular governor or a particular mayor. So you could, in the end, be ending in a worse scenario than before.
Fueling propaganda. Yeah. Maria Jose Lucasole, your colleague, sends much praise for you. Says
Maria Jose is
the essence of your reputation is independence. But she wants to know, are there issues we could study abroad to strengthen the Argentine response to these crises? And I guess perhaps examples would be, what's happening in the US, what's happening in India. Have you seen responses in other countries that you think maybe Argentina could learn from that?
Absolutely. I have friends and colleagues from all over the world that I admire a lot. And the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists has been, for me, a wonderful opportunity to learn from them. But let me focus in Venezuelan journalists, Salvadorian journalists, Nicaraguan journalists, because I'm from Latin America and I get to know them better.
Yeah.
And I'm a part of the jury of the Morse Cabot Awards, and that allows me to get to know journalists from the entire hemisphere every year.
Yeah.
And there are superb examples to be followed. In the case of Venezuela, Nicaragua, Salvador, one of the ideas is set alliances, rich alliances with other local media or local colleagues or international colleagues. Try to circumvent the borders or the limitations that you face. What's your goal? Your goal is to spread the news. If you cannot do it by your own, try to get help from other media outlets, from other colleagues. In our case, sometimes we, a group of colleagues, publish stories that friends of us weren't able to publish in their own media or outlets or in their own countries. In some other situations, we publish stories simultaneously in 10 different countries, just to circumvent limitations and play with the opportunities that the digital platforms and the social media gives you. Yeah, sometimes the ideal situation is to have a wonderful website to publish the entire story, and you don't have that. Well, let's use Twitter, let's use Threads, let's use Instagram, Facebook, and I say again, digital platforms as Telegram, WhatsApp, let's use LinkedIn. Every time I publish my story in all those social media and digital platforms. And funny thing is sometimes I get more views on Twitter than on La Nación's website. Sometimes I get people getting to La Nación from Twitter. And funny thing, something that I never expected, I'm trying to learn now about TikTok, and it's a real issue
Yes,
for me.
Hugo.
No. It's been a disaster so far, but I'm trying.
Welcome to the family.
Yeah, but Caitlin, oddly, you know what really drives readers to my articles?
Mm,
It's not Twitter, it's Instagram stories.
mm,
It's amazing. It really amazed me, but I found that usually I get more people flying to my articles on La Nación's website from the Instagram than from Twitter or Threads or whatever. So
yeah.
let's play with that to circumvent the limitations that maybe for political or economical or whatever reasons
Yeah.
we deal with.
Yeah. Multi-platform response.
Actually, a friend of mine from Lebanon told me that he intensively used Telegram to circumvent challenges that he had in his country. In the case of Lebanon. And I know that a colleague from mine in Brazil is doing the same. Telegram as a tool to spread the news.
Let's go to Samuel Thomas from Nigeria, who has a question about the unions. Go for it.
All right. Hi. Well, my question was about the kind of follow-up, since there's a saying that an injury to one is an injury to all. And going by the fact that if there's some kind of restriction on the press, it's not as if the target is on journalists, but is to like prevent the public from like airing their views, since journalists only offer platforms for people to express their opinions. So, what is the response of other labor unions to these attacks on journalists?
In the case of Argentina, that's a challenge too, because some press unions are somewhat linked to political parties, but I think they are doing a fine job. And in the case of Argentina, you have, I think, 2 or 3 groups, alliances, unions that are quite strong and that help us, I would say, quite well, not wonderfully well, but quite well, and help us to deal with pressures, attacks, and so on. Of course, the ideal, it will be that we would be all together, that we would be all, aiming to the same goals, but that's complicated. And I think in the case of Argentina, at least, it will be naive. But I think they are a useful tool that we must use. If you want to check on the Argentine unions to see what they are doing, one is SIPREVA, SIPREVA. Again, SIPREVA. The other one is FOPEA, FOPEA. Again, FOPEA. They are doing good job, and they are, pushing the journalists' agenda forward, and I think they are doing a good job. Yeah.
Mauricio Alencar has a question from the really opposite end of that spectrum. He says, actually, Argentina's ranked relatively high, around 40 in the Media Freedom Report for 2023, and it's higher even than Italy. And in Milei's government, with his so-called value for freedom of expression, is there really much that journalists can't report on compared to other countries?
Again, I lost you on the question.
Is there really anything that a journalist cannot report on under Milei compared to other countries? Is the crisis a question of what journalists can't report on?
No, there is no. No, well, actually, there are some sensitive topics that it's not that we are forbidden to publish, but that we are asking ourselves if we are willing, able, or should be publishing. One of those topics is a very private issue, is about Milei's mental health. If you were able to get access to Milei's mental medication, would you publish that or not? Is that kind of information personal, private, intimate, or not? Given that Milei is the president of Argentina and maybe his mental health could be a public issue of absolute relevancy for the Argentines' present and future, would you publish it, or would you be crossing a red line of a very private and delicate issue that should not be published? That's a question that we are now discussing. And again, I'm not sure about, and let me be clear about this. Do I know his medications? No. Do I know, or do I have his internal clinical, fact sheet? No. But again, should I be aiming to get access to that, psychiatry or medical shit or not? So yeah, we are dealing with that. But in the case, if the question is going for the areas of, are there any topics forbidden during the president's Milei administration? No, you can publish everything you want, but you will deal with the consequences. Well, like with any other country, yeah, you will publish whatever you want and deal with a major storm afterwards. Yeah, well, it happened with the president's Milei administration, as it happened before with Alberto Fernandez, Mauricio Macri, Cristina Kirchner, and Nestor Kirchner administration. Yeah, that's why I published a story about money laundering by the Kirchner's family when Cristina Kirchner was the president. Yeah, they accused me of treason. They opened a criminal investigation against me. They threatened my family. I dealt with the consequences, but I published anyway.
Yeah. I also wonder if perhaps it's not so much a question of whether you can publish whatever you want, but whether as a good journalist you can access the information you need in order to publish what the public needs to hear.
And that's another complete different question, Caitlin. And that's a great question. And let me be clear about that. Yeah, those are issues and challenges that we all face. Actually, I was able to get to know Jeff Lynn, the Washington Post investigative editor. He's a legend. And when we were having lunch, Jeff told me that in his case, his team, and I'm talking about journalists that won the Pulitzer Prize over and over again. Jeff Lynn's team has won more than a dozen Pulitzer Prize. So imagine that. And he told me that his efficiency rate was around 20%. So that means that only one of every 5 investigations they started, they were able to finish them with a story to be published. In our case, in Argentina, I try to do to audit my own numbers. And you know what I found, Caitlin? that my efficiency rate is of 15%. That is that I've been able to finish one of every seven investigations that I start. Because sometimes what your hypothesis is wrong, or because you get to a dead end and you cannot follow the story, or the information is there, but you cannot get access to it. And that's part of our daily work. That's why not many people, dedicate themselves to investigative journalism. And that's why investigative journalism is expensive, because you are, spending time and human resources, and over again, you fail. And you start over again.
I really like that the crisis is not overt censorship, but the effect on the efficiency rate when journalists are being blocked and their safety is being challenged, and their willingness to publish sensitive information is lower because of the consequences that they will face.
Absolutely. And let me be clear about that, Caitlin. What I found and what I get to know from colleagues from all over the world is that one of the major challenges in journalism is not censorship, it's self-censorship.
There you go.
Many journalists do not want problems. They avoid problems. They just want to have a beer tonight. They just want to hang out during the weekend, have a nice, safe, and smooth weekend. Instead of saying, hey, here we go again, put on your helmet, let's go forward, and let the storm hit you. Of course, it's not nice when you see a president trashing you by your name on public television, or or Twitter. And, according to a study, I was the most insulted Argentine journalist on Twitter for a couple of years. I would say, joking about that I'm the Roger Federer of the insults in Twitter, the number one. And they were throwing shit against me from, the right and the left wings. Missiles were throwing, over my head. So what? I like my job. I love what I do. And if you play soccer, deal with the people that wants the ball too, and the wants to hit you. Otherwise, do any other kind of journalism.
Well, the Roger Federer of journalistic harassment, it's been so fantastic spending the hour with you. I think the big takeaways there were we're at work, not at war, and maintain your networks, because that's what you need.
Build your own safety nets.
The safety net is the community.
Absolutely.
Fantastic.
And in that regard, these kind of forums are part of those safety nets. Let's say the other way around, just to close up. Join the case of people that speak Spanish. Join the Reuters Institute en Español. There is a free newsletter every Saturday that is awesome. Join also any kind of local, national, or international association that you can. Talk to colleagues. Go to press congresses, locally or internationally. Look for the next meeting of the Gabo Foundation, of the ICIJ, or FOPEA, or whatever association you have in your own country.
Yeah.
Let them know you.
Yeah.
And you have to know them, contact them, get their emails, get their phones, and call them whenever is necessary.
Get networked, get organized.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Hugo. Go well.
My pleasure. Okay.
More power to you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
And
Bye.
thank you all for having me. My pleasure.
Go well.
Bye-bye.